Meet Codename Goose, your on-machine open-source AI agent. Built to automate your tasks, Codename Goose is an intelligent and autonomous agent capable of handling complex tasks thanks to its core features. Connect with apps and tools you already use with extensions. Built on the Model Context Protocol, you can connect to extensions like GitHub, integrate JetBrains IDEs, access Google Drive, or build your own custom integrations for Goose. For a curated list of extensions, visit our docs. With a wide range of compatible large language model providers, you can choose and integrate your preferred model. You can also run Goose as a desktop app or through the command line interface using the same configurations across both. You can think of Goose as an assistant, ready to take your instructions and do the work for you. Able to handle a wide range of tasks across various engineering domains. Here are examples of tasks Goose has helped people with already. Goose has helped dive into a new project in an unfamiliar coding language, conduct code migration such as Ember to React or Ruby to Kotlin, increase code coverage, and even generate unit tests for a feature, and much more. To get started using Goose right away, check out our Quick Start and be the first to know about upcoming features by joining our community.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Wild Goose Case, where we highlight the users of our community, how they're using Goose, and some fun experiments with technology. We're here to spark some innovation and some fun discussion and push the limits of using Goose. My name's Ian Douglas. I'm a developer advocate here at Block, and with me is Adewale. We call him Ace on our team. I'll let Ace introduce himself and what they do.
Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? My name is Adewale Abati. Everyone calls me Ace. I'm a developer advocate also at Block, and it's exciting to be here once again, joining another exciting episode of the Wild Goose Case.
Yeah, awesome. Well, welcome to everybody joining us in chat. Let us know where you're coming in from. And if you're watching this after the live stream, welcome to you as well. Say hi in the comments for us. Happy time zone, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're at. We welcome you in. And with us today, we've actually got, we've got a coworker from Block. His name is Sam Beekler, and we'll let Sam introduce himself. Sam, you work at Block. What is a TPRM analyst, and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm a third-party risk analyst. I've been here about 4 years now, but I'm in the foundational org, and we make sure that vendors and third parties that we work with are doing so in a safe and compliant way. But yeah, I'm not an engineer, and so I work with a lot of unstructured data, a lot of spreadsheets, and that type of stuff.
Awesome. So our topic today is how you kind of came up with an idea for working with spreadsheets, but to build an app out of that. And not being a developer, not being a programmer, tell us a little bit about how you kind of came up with this idea and how you got Goose to help you out with, hey, could we build this into like a reusable app?
Yeah, so a lot of work that we do or struggle with is manually working with spreadsheets, cleaning up data. And so seeing how people were using Goose to write code and how people thought that LLMs were either good or bad or whatever they thought of how they were doing writing code. But I thought it would be interesting to see if Python and using Goose to write these Python codes to manipulate spreadsheets and work with data, if it would be able to do that for us really quickly, because that's not something that we would have like the time, resources, or expertise to approach without a tool like this.
Gotcha.
We just don't. Our data sets aren't that big. Our projects are kind of more on a one-off basis, so we don't get the chance to build things. But it's like, hey, Goose can kind of do this for us really quickly. We can see what's possible.
Gotcha. So can you tell us, like, without going into like too much critical detail, like what kind of data are you capturing into these spreadsheets, and how would you typically kind of go through them as a team and analyze what this data is, to where, if we had a script to do this, it would make us, 20% faster, or, 100% faster at what we do?
Yeah, I mean, think of like Jira ticket data, like stuff that's just sort of typed in by users. It's not structured. It's in the thousands to tens of thousands, but it's not like real-time streaming data. It's not numerical. It's just lots of text, lots of missing fields, lots of misspelled fields. And so a lot of it just comes down to being like able to line things up, for lack of a better word. String sort of manipulation, fuzzy matching, that stuff that Excel and Google Sheets just really aren't that good at. And that's where you kind of run into the limitations. If you have two spreadsheets and there's no key tying them together, you can't really do anything with it. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it started.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, certainly, looking at user input data, that's always really unpredictable. Are they going to type in a proper string? Are they going to give us the right kind of data in the right field? Are they going to start putting emojis in there? How do we interpret all of that kind of stuff? That would definitely put a lot of strain on a team. I could see why you would want to go through and kind of analyze that. Cool. So tell us a little bit about what kind of app you wanted to build that would sort of automate that. Like what kinds of patterns would you typically be looking for that, writing this into a Python script would, like, what, I guess, more to summarize, what would be the most common kind of thing that you would have to look for in these spreadsheets to have something help automate this for you?
Yeah, so a lot of our data would be like vendor names or like ticket numbers or usernames or matching usernames to email addresses, just like figuring out what's going on across a bunch of different systems. And as you know, Block is a big company and there's tons of systems and data lives in different places. So it's being able to take spreadsheets that are similar but not the same and really be able to bring them together, because my team is in the foundational group, and we sort of look across all of the different verticals here at Block. So it's kind of normally what would be manual, like making sure that spreadsheets and processes and whatever followed across a bunch of different groups and a bunch of different systems. It's like, hey, can Python and some of these Python libraries that I've heard of help us do that?
I was just gonna ask, based on what you said, like pointing out that you are a non-developer, and I'm assuming you've had multiple repetitions of trying to do the same task like over and over again over weeks. And I think my curiosity is more like the mindset shift, and also like just the awareness where, especially for any other non-developers watching the stream, how you were able to move from that, okay, I've been doing this so much, how do I identify a way for like AI to come into the space to actually help me optimize the entire flow? And then we can use that to transition into the demo. But I think it's more than just, I mean, it's one thing that you're aware that, oh, maybe a Python script can do this, but I guess for most non-developers, and I guess, which is why I'm asking about the mindset should work for you, to be able to be like, you know what, I've been doing this repeatedly, how can I just automate it? Like, I think it's more than just, deciding. I think it's a mindset shift. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I think, I've been curious about AI. Like I've read about it, kind of followed along, and I've, not since college, but I've like written a little bit of code and used MATLAB and Python in school. Gotcha. And so it was kind of like we started out, and I think a lot of people started out like thinking of the chat model as like, oh, I give it some information, it gives me some information back. And it's like, that's great. And it's like, if I can give it a little bit more information, can it give me back a tool? And that was, I think, where this kind of took off.
Sounds good. I guess we can go ahead into the demo then.
Yeah. So Sam built us a demo, so we're going to go into this. So Sam, walk us through a little bit like what it was that you started with, because one idea that we chatted with before we came on stream was, how do you even tell AI what to do? And that's something that we would call prompt engineering. Like, how do you come up with a prompt that is descriptive enough that it's going to have a good enough awareness of what it is you're trying to do to where it can build you this app? So walk us through kind of that thought process, and then maybe we can start going through your demo here.
Yeah. So in this demo actually starts with Goose putting together the demo. It's a little recursive, but it's trying to articulate not just like the problem, not leaving it up to Goose just to take a guess at a solution, but giving it some direction on like, here's what I think the solution looks like. Here's where I think this should go. Here's the data that I think we should be looking at. Here's the fields, the columns. Like, the more specific I've been, definitely the better results I've gotten. And I don't think we need to spend too much time because I used Goose to put together this demo. So I asked it, hey, can you start like downloading some public data that we can use to sort of demo this machine learning app building capability that we've discovered here. So I'll hit play, kind of scroll through, but the idea was to like just start out and just go start getting me data, so I don't have to spend the time like finding stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can see the prompt there. I'm just asking it to take a wild guess, but let's see if there's a couple databases we can find just so we have some data to play with. And Goose has all kinds of capabilities that I'm barely able to keep up with, but it's searching the web, it's finding things, it's downloading data sets, it's organizing them for me. And it does this, I think, for a little while. It goes through all kinds of weather data. The machine learning concept that I wanted to just try was, can we look at weather data or historical wildfires and land cover data to build a machine learning model? I figured that's like kind of a decent application. There's some public data out there. So it does. It downloads historical data, and I haven't actually even opened any of these files, which is what's so interesting, is that it's not, it downloads the data, but as it goes, it's able to sort of clean up, join, match. Like, it's taking care of a lot of the stuff behind the scenes that would be really manual if this was like a full-fledged project.
So can you talk to us a little bit about the data sources? Like, what was in that initial prompt around, like, go find wildfire data and weather data to do what with that? Like, what was it that you were trying to do with that data?
So the initial prompt was like, I'm putting together a demo, and so I wanted some public data sources that could be useful for a demonstration of a machine learning app built by an AI. And so that's where I told it, like, historical wildfire data, cover data, and I think it's just started kind of Google searching those and then finding this public data sets that were available.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then from there, whenever it runs into an issue, and I think people, anyone that's using these tools, like, it's good to just like let it tell you if it's stuck, and then you can sort of go do any like manual step. Like, if it kept running into an error trying to download something, I'm just like, give me the links, I'll go download it. And so that kind of, I think this is the second prompt. So it goes through a lot of work. It creates a project outline. And so this is where we have, we've gotten to a point, it's downloaded the data for this demo. It's put together sort of an outline of the sort of Python project that it's going to do, and go from there. And I actually start running out of context here a bit. But I'll let it go.
So Ace, can you explain to us what this context is in terms of like what Goose is doing?
Yeah, when you start a new session with Goose, you are basically starting on a mostly blank slate. Of course, there are instructions that are sent to the LLM, which is like your AI provider in the background. That kind of gives you context, which is what we're trying to explain here. So context itself is everything about your current session that is relevant to what you're trying to do. It could be any information you've passed yourself, or it could be something that you probably have in like your Goose int, which is like a memory kind of prompting, system prompts to Goose, like this is what I want you to include in every single time I'm starting a session. So everything that has to do with your preferences or your instructions so far in that session, everything goes, and the responses as well go into what the context is.
And you can also see here that Goose is running all of this Python for me. So I'm not like in terminal or anything like running things.
Right.
Like it's creating these scripts and running them for me.
So just to recap real quick, what we are trying to show off here is the fact that we have a set of data, like data points, and we want to be able to build something off of them, like an application, just off by giving Goose a spreadsheet, or at least a couple of spreadsheets if that's the case. And so I think you mentioned the initial prompt. I just got like the demo data. I couldn't see the entire thing, but what was the instruction, or what kind of app are we trying to build out of that data?
The machine learning prediction model. So
prediction model. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we've got, if we can put in weather data, we can put in land cover data, maybe we can, and historical wildfire data, maybe we can build a Python app that uses machine learning to try and predict. It's very ambitious. It's cool. So
we're trying to predict maybe possible future wildfires or stuff like that. Interesting.
Yeah. And in my day-to-day on the third-party risk management team, measuring and predicting risk is a lot of what we're working towards. And so trying to find ways to automate that, to do it better, to be more forward-thinking, to rely on data. That's how we're applying this in our group as well.
Interesting. Outside of AI tools like Goose, how would you have approached doing this in the first place? Or would it be something you just wouldn't bother doing?
It would be really, really hard. Like we would have to try and get engineering resources or find a company that does this, that sort of sells this as a SaaS application. But building these models and that type of work is not something we would have the capacity to do. We're pretty small.
I can imagine.
Especially when you're not an engineer, like something like this, like how do I even, like I see all this data, but like how do I even start putting this together? If you're not a developer and you don't have that mindset of methodically going through and trying to find matching patterns and so on, or even the math mindset of how do we correlate weather data and wildfire predictions and even coming up with predictive models. I envision like the blackboard with all the math formulas on there. Like that would scare me away from it, just in and of itself. And I am a developer, but trying to come up with that math and whatever would be pretty tricky. So definitely using an AI tool is pretty awesome. And, obviously an agent like Goose, where you can give it kind of this abstract idea and then kind of refine that prompt over time, like also do this within the scope of that context, is a really smart way of doing this for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's also, you can see up on the screen now, like it's going through and installing the Python requirements. Like this is not something I understand even how to do. Like I could probably stumble through it over weeks in terminal trying to follow the instructions. But it hits errors. It keeps sort of trying virtual environments. It's looking and making sure that things are working. It's what I find really interesting about this is it's like it's not getting stuck. Like it's working through issues as they're coming up in a relatively automated way.
So as it's running, so it's generating the code, and as it's running its own code, it's finding errors and then going back and fixing that code itself. So you're completely hands off on this. You're just like, here's an idea, and it's just going and correlating all this data and figuring out what to do.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting part of what it's able to do. It's not just finding errors in the code, but in the Python scripts that it's writing, in the data that's interpreting, it's actually looking at those outputs as well. So it's doing some of the data analysis. It's kind of, and
That's
it's
cool.
Not, I mean, it's not probably an authority on data science and the best way to do things, but it's definitely has some insight. And it's like, oh, I try to model, the score didn't match right. Maybe there's something wrong with like the modeling that I'm doing. So there's like an element of the code that it's doing and an element of this data science exploration that it's doing as well. Which it's showing me that there's like a lot for me to learn. If I want to use machine learning, like I have to learn the terminology. I have to learn what these methods are. I have to learn how it applies, what common errors are, what things are useful and what things are not. So it's processing data, it generates visualizations, and then, here you can see the output. So it tried 3 different models. It took the input data sources. It tried 3 different models. It trained those against the historical wildfire data. And it found the best match, which was this gradient boosting model, which is something I'd have to go read about and figure out what that means. But it was able to do all of that in, I don't know, 2 or 3 prompts, which is really interesting. And based on the demo you put together, it was only a couple of minutes to do that too, right? It wasn't like it was spending hours and hours on this. Yeah, because it's not feeding too much data back and forth through the language model. Like the machine learning packages in Python are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and these data sets aren't that big, so it's able to do that really quickly.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's giving me some instructions and stuff, and this is where I spend time trying to paste things into terminal, but instead I'm like, hey, can you put this in a user interface? And that's cool. That's the prompt, and so we'll see what it does. But we've tried, or I've been sort of using this and figuring out there's packages that work and packages that don't work, and things that it gets stuck on and things that it doesn't. But it's interesting that it sees where it starts running into issues and like adjusts its approach. And
it's clever. It's clever that it's finding it's like the places where it's tripping itself up, and then like cycling back through that and figuring out how to fix that for itself so it can continue working.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think there's an element here where like the less it has to think about, like the simpler the task is, like the better it is at making sure it's doing things correctly. Let's see, I think I just missed it, but I think I pasted in just one of the errors that it gave when I opened.
Did you?
I think I ran it. It gave me an error, and so I pasted it back. And it's I don't understand Python environments and virtual environments and all of that stuff. So it works through those errors for me. And I think yep. And so here's the user interface that it was able to build. And I don't think, and it did that. I mean, you saw the prompts I gave it. Like I did not tell it what to put in there. And I think it generates an error. So I have to go back and tell it, hey, there's an error with the model that you're trying to pull.
That is very interesting because I don't know why I just assumed it was gonna be like a web page or something. And I think it built like a native application, like the Python script with the entire Mac environment. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think I've seen that's kind of what works is like if it's in one file,
Yeah.
it can sort of figure stuff out. But I ran out of context, and so there's a README or a Markdown file in there. So this is a new instance, and I asked it. I think we need to simplify this a little bit. I'm still running into an error, but I also eventually want to package this so that other users can install it on their computer. So that's
Right.
kind of. So we've got this thing. It's the modeling is working. The user interface, we're trying to get it to work, and then I want to be able to share it. And so I kind of restart it here with simplifying the process and putting in an installer. And again, it's kind of the game of like not giving it too much information because then it runs out of context, but giving it enough information that it knows where to go. And it's
Right.
Especially when you have to start a new session, because when you start a new session, there is a plugin in Goose that can help it remember from one thing to another. I think it's called computer memory, where it will try to remember things that it's already discussed in other sessions, but it still has to kind of go back and look through the code and re-examine what it had been doing and giving itself enough of a breadcrumb to know like where you need it to go from here. When you say like, hey, continue working, it's like, okay, well, let me go examine everything and then figure out where I might have left off.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see. So it went through, and all of that Python code was the packaging instructions and everything in the user interface. And then I just wanted to make sure, hey, I want to make sure you know that you're going to be installing this on a Mac because I don't think it knows that natively. Our team is all on Macs, so.
So now this is going through and it's basically bundling this up into like an installable package that anyone on your team could effectively like install on their system and be able to run, and it would have that user interface and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it tends to give the instructions. It's like, hey, run this, run this, run this. And the instructions, and then a lot of what I'm asking is just, can you do those? And it does, which is I find so interesting.
That is cool.
Now, Ace, correct me, at the bottom of the interface where we can see Goose mode in auto, there are a couple of different settings there where Goose will go run the commands, or it will just tell you the commands so that you have control over that, as opposed to it working in kind of an autonomous mode where it goes and does this stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, autonomous mode makes you like act on take the actions itself, and then you can decide if it wants to. I mean, it's always going to ask you if it's running a sensitive command. But for example, it can create the files automatically or run any of the shell commands by default. But I think based on also the choice of the LLM, which is the language model, sometimes it also wants to ask you to run the shells, especially if it's a command that could, take a long time or doesn't exit after running it. So you don't want to be in like a timeout or just a frozen terminal environment. So you kind of like observes to see which ones you should be able to run, or just recommend that you run it in a different shell, and that just kind of keeps the main thread going.
Right.
I think we have a question as well.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to show that we had a question come in from Isaac asking what's the token usage going through this whole process between starting different sessions and having it querying the data and build the app and go back and fix all these errors and so on. Analyzing the tokens that you use obviously is a big deal because that costs money. So yeah, how would we start to examine like what the sort of breakdown of this would be from number of tokens and output and so
on? I'm not sure because we use this. We're in the block environment, so it Does it show?
There is a way to do this from your session history if you have your Goose open. So you're able to go to like the menu, session history, and then you see a list of your sessions. And just at the bottom, it gives you like an idea of how many tokens you've used and stuff like that. So you can always go back to that.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. They range from like 10 or 20,000 to like 100,000 tokens in each of these.
Nice. And the token limit is also determined by your language model.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the as time goes on, once we learn sort of there's probably looking at all of the errors it hits. I'm sure if we gave it the instructions of like, hey, remember that this works and this doesn't, and this works and this doesn't when it comes to this Python stuff, would definitely limit the number of tokens that it's spending just like hitting errors and going back and forth and trying to rewrite code. As you can see, there's a lot of this is like a couple steps of debugging. I think I ran the UI again from the installer and I told it, hey, I got another error, and it's going through, it goes back through the directory, back through the Python code. A lot of tokens in and out to do that debugging.
Yeah.
And I think that's I ask it to like, hey, summarize the sort of errors that we're getting up to here, because it's gotten the same error 3 times, like put it together in summary. I'm going to need to start a new session. And it does that. So that way I can sort of paste this into a new context window, and it doesn't, you can see here's the new one. I'll scroll back up to the top where I sort of restart it. I tell it the notes, tell it the error, and it's like, okay, let's simplify this, package it up. Because I see that it's close. It's built everything that it needs to build. It's doing what I need it to do, and it's just the packaging piece. And again, without being a developer, like I'm really relying on it to do all of that.
Right.
Like,
this app is too complicated.
Yeah. Exactly, because and this is where the different models are interesting. I think like 3.7 tends to like write a bunch, and 3.5 keeps things a little simpler, and break things into less files. And
so as a Python
things.
As a Python developer myself, my go-to would be like, put things into all these small separate files and know how to import them properly. But when you're not a dev, you don't know how to do those things necessarily. So, allowing AI to do that and make that as simple as possible. Like, you generally don't want to pack everything into like one gigantic file. But, for a use case like this, I think that actually makes sense. So.
Yeah.
Cool. So it goes through and it's simplified everything and kind of like rebuilt the UI and so on for you from that, or the installer from there.
Yeah. And I think I went back and I told it to just do a command line interface. Like, I think the PyQt5 or whatever it's trying to do is just, it keeps breaking stuff.
Okay.
And again, without being a developer, like Goose is absolutely liable just to like nuke everything without like, there's no version control. Like, it's doing this all in one folder. It rewrites the files every single time. And
you could probably give it an initial instruction, like as you're building this out, do git commits, because Goose is aware of how to work with Git. So you could say, like, put this in a Git repo in between every step, after fixing some errors, do a commit into that repo. So it would be able to maintain that history for you as well.
Yeah, but the only comment there is the non-developers will be aware of Git.
Right.
So
Exactly.
What Git is, you probably find a different approach to be like, keep the old files separately, and as we're making new updates, as we structure stuff like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely lots to learn, because it's these tools are becoming useful, right? And so we have to like, I as a non-developer, but I'm using these tools, and it's like, so I have to start keeping track of them. I have to start making sure that I can update them, and that when I share, people have the right version. And so it's using Goose, but like kind of taking these baby steps into learning about these applications and development best practices and stuff. So again, it's going through another version. It ran into another error, and then it gave me a command line interface that was working, but it didn't give me any instructions. It's just like asking for numbers. And so I asked it to prompt the user for each data element that it would need to plug into the machine learning model to make a prediction in the command line interface. And once you do that, create the installer again so that we can share the tool.
Gotcha.
And it goes through. And so that was, I mean, not a ton of prompts, a bit of back and forth.
A bit of troubleshooting along the way.
Iterations, yeah. And I like to tell people this, especially non-developers. Even if you don't know what the final output is going to look like, it's always a good starting point to just engage in a conversation and see where that takes you. Like, because you're giving the more conversations you have, you're giving the LLM context, you're giving it like ideas or something and other things to like explore to then finally get to your final outputs like we have here.
Yeah. And so this is the sort of final output it came up with. So it's asking what month is it, what's the average temperature, its total precipitation, and a drought indice. And then it uses, and then it also asked about the land cover. So these were sort of all of the inputs that we gave the machine learning model, all of the training data sets. And then here's the sort of prediction tool that then we have, and the UI that it put together with very little input from me. You can see it. I think it runs, and it's just going through yes, no, inputting the information, and it goes through the model, or it runs the model that we built. And this is I think running out of the installer that I put together. So it kind of end to end was able to assemble this Python app and put it in an installer. I can share it with my team.
That's cool.
And it works, which is
awesome. Definitely.
That's great.
Before we come back to the app real quick, we have a question here from Isaac. Can Goose teach you as you go and explain why it does things? And the answer is an absolute yes. I mean, as Sam showed, it doesn't necessarily know how to build a machine learning application that could predict stuff. And you can always ask Goose, like, why did you make this choice? Even myself as a developer, sometimes where I'm vibe coding the application and it makes certain choices, I'm able to ask and be like, why didn't you do this other way? Do you want to try this other way? And then we have this conversation like I described, where I might learn something new, or I might just make a correction like, you know what, while this might be correct, I think I prefer to structure my files in this way. So absolutely, it's able to teach and explain things, and you can always make adjustments, just like Sam did from the GUI to the CLI. It just keeps going. Yeah.
We also had a question on Discord real quick, asking the AI model that was used to run the Goose session, and it looks like Sam was using Claude 3.5.
Right. I think you started with 3.7, right? And then you switched somewhere along the line? Okay.
Yeah, I think when I was putting together this demo, 3.7 just kept making it so it kept it loves to write so much code. And I'm like, intuitively, I don't think this is I think this is overcomplicating it. Like, I don't know a ton about Python, but a lot of Python should be pretty simple. It's like like state the problem, import the solution, and like go from there.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind for everyone watching. Like, the model can also shape the experience. So sometimes you can also do a little bit of research to find out like the best models for the kind of work that you want to do, content, code writing, stuff like that is always, or coding, code writing, is always a good way to check stuff from. But yeah. I think we have another question from YouTube or Twitter actually. Yes, there's gonna be a recording of this on YouTube. You can always check it out. Also on Twitter too, I think.
Yeah, I think Twitter keeps it for a little while. I'll drop a link here for the YouTube that you can come back and watch it later on as well.
Yeah. So I have a question, Sam, real quick. We've been able to go from like a data set to a GUI and also like a CLI application. And I think this kind of just opens up some level of power, yes, but like does it create a whole new avenue to be able to create data-driven applications even without being tech savvy? And what does that feel for someone that works a lot in spreadsheet? And like what ideas, for example, do you feel like you have for some of the things that I do in spreadsheet to be able to make it into other scripts like this?
I've spent a lot of time working with data visualization as well, and so it's like you can ask Goose like, "Hey, can you build me?" And if you tell it like a D3.js visualization using this data, it can do that. And then what's interesting is you can give it screenshots or examples and be like, "Can you use these colors? Can you use this like sort of brand template?" And I just know that package exists in Python. I do not know how it works. I do not know what it does. And I've like asked it, and again, because I need it to keep it simple, but it's like, can you put this in an HTML web page that just runs on my laptop, D3.js visualization, use the block branding, and it'll just go.
That is amazing.
So it's
and kind of going back to Isaac's question earlier about token usage, like if you are a developer, you can certainly ask Goose like, "Hey, like guide me along the way," and it'll do some of the work and you can go correct it yourself. But if you're like Sam, where you're not a developer, we have to rely on AI to say like, "Hey, I don't know how to do this. I don't know Python, or I don't know how to use this package. Like, can you go do that for me?" It'll figure it out, but it will use more tokens to do that for you.
Definitely. Sounds good.
Yeah. And it's so cool that, I was going to say, it's really cool that you, like Ace said, going from the idea to building like a GUI app, like a user interface app, and then going to a command line version, like having it be able to write the code in a way that it could kind of pivot and give you either or both is really tremendous. And I like how the UI actually started out with kind of that scatter graph, and showing you some of the data, like write in some graphs, and you could go in and kind of play with those drop downs and so on. It was really interesting to see how it was able to kind of understand that from the data to know even which fields to make those little drop downs for you, or, hey, this looks like a numerical range input, and be able to figure that out as it built out that user interface.
Yeah, it's interesting how much it's able to do in a very conversational way. Like I think if we were sitting down and like trying to approach this in a big team with a bunch of engineers that knew all of the right things, it would be like the back and forth would be, okay, what data are we looking at? How are we trying to use it? Where does the data come from? How do we manipulate it? How do we visualize it? How do we package it? And you're sort of having that conversation with Goose, and it's able to, it's not perfect, but it is able to do so much so quickly. And I think that's what's been so interesting. It's finding how can we leverage this in a way that like stays useful? Like how can we find the things that it gets right and gets right quickly?
Yeah, it's awesome.
That is cool. Yeah, I don't know if you have any more questions in chat, but this has been very insightful. I'm already thinking in the background some of the spreadsheets I've had from like my budgets, all of those other random personal stuff, and now I can just be like, you know what, create something for me out of the data set. It's very exciting to see. But if in the absence of any questions, I think we can just wrap this up because this has been very informative. Thank you so much, Sam, for sharing this entire experience with us. And we have a couple of people in the chat that are also excited to try this. I'm looking forward to hearing all about that in the future as well. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this.
Yep.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. On that note, thanks everyone. Thanks, chat. We'll see you on the next episode of Wild Goose Case.
All right,
everyone.
Cheers.